welcome to Northwest Newsweek. The Thunder Bay District hit a major milestone in the fight against COVID-19 this week when the health unit announced on Monday that there were 0 known active cases of the virus within its service area. That was a first since late March, when the first confirmed case of the virus was reported by the health unit. Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Janet DeMille, calls it a great position to be in as more and more businesses open their doors. But she insists we're not out of the woods yet and points out that other jurisdictions across the country experienced an increase once businesses started to reopen.
As we continue to reopen, there will be more opportunities for people to have closer interactions with one another in spaces, especially indoor spaces, where transmission is more likely to happen. The level of transmission of the virus in communities can quickly increase. This can happen without us being aware that it is actually happening.
That's because it can take 2 weeks or more to detect such an increase. DeMille says the current status is a testament to the efforts and sacrifices of area residents and business owners over the last 4 months. Meanwhile, COVID has returned to another part of the region. On Friday, the Northwestern Health Unit reported 1 new case in the Emo area. No details were released at that time about the person affected or how they came into contact with the virus, but the agency has started contact tracing. It's the 43rd confirmed case in the Northwestern Health Unit catchment area. Well, it's the latest indication that Thunder Bay is currently winning in its fight against the virus. The Regional Health Sciences Centre has closed its dedicated COVID-19 unit. The move was made to accommodate more surgical patients as the hospital continues to work through the backlog of non-essential surgeries that were postponed due to the pandemic. Less than 3.5 months after the Regional Health Sciences Centre opened its dedicated COVID-19 unit in anticipation of a major influx in positive cases, Incident Manager Dr. Stuart Kennedy and his team have determined the unit is no longer necessary.
This influx never occurred. The total number of patients treated on the unit was 123 treated in our COVID beds. Only 12 of those patients were COVID-19 positive, and I believe we only had about 4 at one time.
From now on, COVID patients will be treated in a number of isolated rooms. If the hospital gets 7 confirmed cases at one time, a decision will then be made on whether to reopen the unit. And that, according to Kennedy, can happen very quickly.
If we get a surge in COVID-19 patients, we are ready to move back to that unit, certainly within days, if not hours.
There are still no known active cases of COVID-19 in the Thunder Bay District. Dr. Salima Ukashbi, who worked on the COVID-19 unit, notes there's still 1 patient being treated at the hospital who had been positive, but that person is no longer infectious and their case is considered resolved.
The patient is not shedding the virus anymore. So, as of today, if it weren't for other comorbidities, I would be able to discharge the patient.
Overall, hospital officials feel well prepared to deal with a second wave of the virus should it hit. That's assuming, of course, that members of the public continue to act responsibly, adhering to proper physical distancing and the new mandatory mask order that was put in place by the health unit. A 67-year-old Red Lake man is dead, and it's possible that he was the victim of a bear attack. OPP was advised that the man hadn't returned home from a blueberry picking expedition on Monday morning. A search was launched and the man was found dead in an area off of Highway 105 between Red Lake and Ear Falls. A black bear was also located in the area and was dispatched by the officers. The animal's remains have since been sent to Guelph for testing. Community activists in Kenora celebrated a big win this week after council voted down a controversial loitering bylaw that many felt unfairly targeted Indigenous people and the homeless. But as Teresa Isri reports, there's still work to do to solve the issues in that community.
Protesters watched the Kenora City Council meeting off their phones. That's 4 against! Erupting in cheers after the bylaw was defeated.
And Mayor Raynard?
Nay, the resolution is defeated.
I'm so heartened by this action. I'm happy that councillors
change their votes.
The proposed loitering bylaw was defeated after several councillors changed their minds.
I'm going to not support it.
Only one member of council voted in support.
Supported the original bylaw proposal and still think it will help address our concerns from citizens, which I believe are the silent majority. While this bylaw will not solve all of the problems in our city, it would be a positive first step.
If passed, it would have given police the power to fine people $100 for loitering on public property.
The fact that it got tabled was ridiculous. A loitering bylaw wasn't a solution. It's not even near a solution. It would racially target a lot of people.
In the picturesque tourist town, poverty is also part of the landscape.
In Kenora all my life, and I like it here.
Brian Morrison lives on the streets and says he's been asked to leave public places.
I used to sit right here, but they told me not to hang around here.
The Ontario Human Rights Commission wrote a letter to Kenora City Council on Monday, warning the bylaw would disproportionately impact homeless people, many of whom are Indigenous.
And rather than try and move them out of sight, out of mind, they should work with other partners to develop solutions.
What would you prefer to see as a solution to
Housing. Housing, housing, housing.
Taria Isri, CTV News, Kenora.
The Ford government is providing $800,000 for a community safety patrol in Kenora. It's part of a year-long pilot project with the Kenora Bear Clan Patrol to improve safety and ensure the well-being of the city's most vulnerable. Patrol teams will monitor Kenora streets and public spaces 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The announcement and the start of the patrols, as mentioned, comes mere days after council there struck down that controversial bylaw. The town of Ignace is still in the running as one of two possible sites for a nuclear waste repository. But members of some nearby First Nations have expressed a number of concerns about the $23 billion project, and they invited officials from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization to meet with them this week. Corey Nordstrom has more.
The meeting was organized by members of the Ojibwe Nation of Saugeen with presentations from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. The First Nation members say they haven't been informed by their leadership about the possible nuclear waste repository in nearby Ignace.
It's really hard to get information out of them. I've been trying to call the band office for almost 3 months now, like continuously before COVID hit, to try to get answers of what's happening, and they still haven't called me to this day.
NWMO spokesperson Bradley Hammond says a member of Saugeen contacted the NWMO requesting more information. Members of our Indigenous engagement team arranged to meet in Ignace. Earlier this week, we were informed of a request to change the meeting location to Thunder Bay and that additional individuals from Indigenous communities would be attending.
For them to come and sit with us, it's a huge step because we're here without chief and council. It's the grassroots people that are sitting here.
Dougal Media wasn't allowed in the room, but one of the participants recorded a live feed of the meeting. Dodie Lagasick from Environment North was invited by the participants. She was concerned with the possibility that nuclear waste could end up in the region's waterways from a truck crash on a dangerous route.
When you go from Chappaqua to Ignace, the percentage of truck collisions is almost 42%. It's 41.7%.
The NWMO says they would use specialized containers for travel to avoid those situations, yet their information didn't sit right with community members who have grown to distrust the organization.
Give me all the money in the world, and if you were going to stick a nuclear thing under my place and say you're going to bury it there, I would take the land. I'd say to get that thing out of here, because there's no price tag for life.
Mashimity and others also felt the NWMO was acting as if the repository already has a green light for Ignace, but reassuring words were given by those in the room.
We are not approving this project, but we do approve learning about this project in case we are asked if we support the project. And we may say no, and we may say yes.
The NWMO continues to conduct geological research in the Ignace area, with the decision on a preferred site expected in 2023. Corey Nordstrom, TBC News.
On Wednesday, Long Lake 58 First Nation near Long Lac grew 6 times larger after acquiring nearly 1,700 hectares from the federal government. The community has been trying to expand for 45 years. Until now, the community was confined to just 260 hectares. The addition should give Long Lake 58 access to additional economic development opportunities, and this might not be the only land increase for the community, as there's another land claim process separate from Wednesday's expansion that's still underway. Well, some good news for drivers here in the Northwest. Several key highway twinning projects, including from Kenora to the Manitoba border and sections of highway from Thunder Bay to Nipigon, have received additional funding, and that could bring about 4,700 jobs to the region as well. Adam Riley has the details.
We had identified in previous rounds of funding the need for more highway construction and refurbishment across the region.
$625 million in funding is expected to help kickstart the first stage of twinning of Highway 17 from Kenora to the Manitoba border and get more work done on the Thunder Bay to Nipigon project, which hasn't changed much since crews wrapped in September of 2018. Energy, Northern Development and Mines Minister Greg Rickford says this latest announcement is a form of surge funding to bolster money which was already allocated to the Northern Highways program.
This resource is tagged more to major highway, in addition to bridge and other various other road surface repairs, some of the major pieces of highway across the region that work could be continued on.
Around $127 million has been set aside for highway expansions, including the twinning of 4 more sections between Pass Lake and Nipigon, totaling 33 kilometers. And the plans also include a section from the Ontario-Manitoba border east to Highway 673.
We're once again back on track.
Thunder Bay Superior North MPP and former Minister of Northern Development and Mines, Michael Gravel, understands Rickford's push for the Kenora area project, but welcomes the announcement. And like Rickford, Gravel wants to see a federal commitment to twinning and says he intends to speak with area MP Patty Hajdu for said commitment.
I've always advocated for a stronger role for the federal government in terms of our highway funding. I mean, in the good old days, the federal government contributed 50% to the building of the highways across the country. And while we're no longer at that point, I want to continue, and I will continue to advocate for significant federal funding.
During the 2019 NOMA conference in Thunder Bay, Rickford noted that $100 million from both the federal and provincial governments earmarked for the Kenora area project had been moved. Now he says he knows what happened.
At some point in the past, it would be 4 years now, I was not the member of parliament, and it was before I was elected 2 years ago, hard to believe. So in that tight window there, our former federal member in Kenora Rainy River and the provincial government simply watched that money move to another section of the province.
Each project listed has a completion date of either 2023 or 2024, both of which sit outside of the current government's mandate. But Rickford feels if crews are mustered quick enough, those goals will be attainable. Adam Riley, TBT News.
New Democrat MPP Saul Mamakwa is calling on the province to make the foster system safer for Ontario's children. He says COVID-19 has increased the risks while the province has loosened safety measures. Mamakwa also wants the government to make public the number of children who have died in care during the pandemic.
The government has refused to complete the Freedom of Information Act that requests to disclose the number of children that have died and been seriously injured in the child welfare system since COVID-19 began in March. This information should be readily available to the public, Mr. Speaker. The fact that the government makes it so difficult to access these numbers doesn't create any trust. Why does Ontario not want us to know how our child welfare system not protected children and youth during this pandemic?
Our top priority remains the health and safety well-being of children, youth and families in Ontario, including those who are supported in the child welfare system. Throughout the COVID-19 outbreak, Children's Aid Services continue to operate and provide services to children, youth and families. Societies have been encouraged to find alternative methods for providing services while observing public health recommendations and using technology where appropriate. As part of this government's commitment and efforts to stop the spread of COVID-19, We have invested up to $40 million to support organizations that provide residential services, including residential services and settings for children and youth.
When we come back, a pair of communities near the North Shore have developed plans to help businesses still reeling from COVID-19. Many municipalities have tried to help local businesses weather the COVID-19 pandemic by deferring property taxes or canceling late fees. But the towns of Marathon and Manitouwadge have gone a step further to protect small businesses within those communities. Adam Riley explains.
The Northwest is well on its way into stage 3 of reopening, with many businesses welcoming customers back. But some are still reeling from being closed for several weeks or months. When the shutdown was first announced in March, Council and Marathon knew they had to act.
So we took $100,000 out of our reserve account and put it back into offsetting some of the business expenses that they were faced with that couldn't generate any economic impact for the closures of those 2 or 3 months. Well, now we're further into it, but of course it's been going on to 4 months.
Dumas says more than 20 businesses in Marathon applied to the fund and were given anywhere from $500 to $5,000 to put towards covering non-tax related expenses like rent, wages, and hydro. He adds small businesses are essential for both the local and regional economy.
We want those businesses to survive and be in business when the COVID-19 has completely relaxed, not just stage 3, but completely relaxed, where businesses are back to normal, full capacity, and people are moving out and about and freely without any hindrance.
This week during Marathon Council, it was announced the fund would be winding down by the end of the week, and any remaining money would be split up and given to further support the applicants. But Dumas says the door is still being left open should the town or the province be shuttered again. Meanwhile, in Manitouwadge, Mayor John McEachern says council has come up with a different solution to boost local business.
We got together and decided that it would be a good idea to issue what we call the Manitouwadge bucks, which is money that people can use, or dollars that they can use in all the small businesses in town.
To finance the Manitouwadge Bucks, Council is dipping into a $700,000 fund the town received from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization when it ended its operations in the community last fall. McEachern says surveys are being sent out to households, and once the town has an accurate number, the bucks will be dispersed.
The bucks will be in $20 denominations, and then people can go into any of the stores in town, and the stores have all agreed, with the exception of the liquor store, obviously, and the post office, that they will accept those bucks, and then But once a week, the stores will then come to the town and get their money back for the bucks that they redeemed. It will be the same as having $20 bills.
McEachern estimates around $150,000 will be used from the NWMO fund to run the Manitowoc Bucks program. He adds at this point this is a one-time offer, but should the situation change, this or another plan could be considered. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The pandemic has brought a lot of uncertainty to the education sector, and for remote First Nations, it's further hindered the delivery of long-distance education. The Mattawa Tribal Council has submitted a major funding request to senior levels of government, asking for an extra $25 million in education funding. The money would help cover a laundry list of new expenses for the Mattawa Education and Care Centre in Thunder Bay, as well as schooling in Mattawa's 9 remote First Nations. Mattawa's emergency COVID-19 education response plan calls for upgrades to school common areas to promote physical distancing, more PPE supplies, and additional transportation to allow for staggered busing. As Mattawa's Nick Shaver explains, the biggest need is for better broadband service in the north that plagues both students and educators.
I was a teacher in education in one of the communities for 9 years, and it didn't take very long to realize that the internet and the access to resources that the internet can provide were next to nothing.
We need to support the students that don't have a high school in their community, and it's not safe for them to leave their community to attend school. So how do you deliver those services and supports?
Pattison notes there is a plan to upgrade the internet in Mattawa First Nations, but that won't happen for years, and they need the additional resources right now. Nabinimik First Nation will have a more secure energy grid after installing 2 new diesel generating units. The federal government announced the $2.3 million investment this week. The generators arrived on the Winter Road network this past season. Nabinimik, also known as Summer Beaver, sits about 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. It's home to 382 people. Well, coming up after the break, the spring of 2021 is expected to be a strong season for honeybees and other pollinators in Dryden, after Council declared a pair of honeybee appreciation months. Next May and June, residents in Dryden will be able to grow their grass a little longer to help out one of the hardest working creatures on the planet, the honeybee. It's thanks to the effort of one local beekeeper. Adam Riley has more.
My bees are my children. As weird as that may sound, they are. I care for them.
For almost 25 years, Regan Breeze has been tending to his honeybees in Dryden and is now celebrating a major win for his little pollinators after the city declared the months of May and June as honeybee appreciation months. Now residents who install a yet-to-be-designed lawn sign in their yard will be allowed to let their grass and flowers grow higher than the 20 centimeters listed in the current bylaw.
So they'll allow your clover to grow, your dandelions to grow, and the devil's paintbrush, which are usually the first ones that grow, which are vital in the springtime because it's the first nectar flow that happens that feeds all the pollinators.
According to Breeze, a single hive can host up to 80,000 bees and can cover a 5-kilometer radius, which has a major impact on plants in the area. At the same time, there is a sweet deal that comes from that, and not just with fresh honey.
My apple trees are just flourishing and the branches are bending over because all the flowers at the beginning of the spring have been pollinated by the bees profusely over and over and over. When a bee pollinates a flower and gathers the nectar from it, and it pollinates it over and over and visits it more time and more time, what happens is the fruit becomes more sweeter.
Breeze is hoping more communities adopt similar bee appreciation initiatives and that beekeeping will grow in popularity, which he says would benefit everyone, especially gardeners and farmers. Recently, Breeze announced several partnerships with area businesses like the PI restaurant in Dryden and the Lake of the Woods Brewery in Kenora.
Next spring, they're going to have the beehive from Beezer's Honey, which is my company, on top of there, and 100% of the proceeds will be donated to that restaurant so they can have all the honey. They can do whatever they want with whatever those bees create.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
That'll do it for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching.